Round for tea. Students, teachers and people who live locally.
Thanks, and hopefully there'll be more of the same today. Just to start with some housekeeping, a bit of formality. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if there is an actual fire. But there are fire marshals to guide you to the nearest fire exit, which is through there. And toilets, hopefully everyone knows, just towards the back through the double doors. Again, can we thank all the student media, so the Galleon, they'll be live blogging throughout it, so thank you. UPSU TV are filming the event, and that'll be going up later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And Pugwash and Pure FM will be active on Twitter, so you can follow them to keep up to date with what's going on there. So for today's format, each candidate's question time will last between 10 and 20 minutes, and that'll vary depending on how many candidates are running for each position. And we'll try and fit in as many questions as we can in that time. Due to the bylaws, a minimum of 2 of them have got to be candidate or manifesto specific. So more than likely we'll start with that and then go on to the generic questions just after that. And like I said yesterday in the SABs, because of the limited time, please try and keep to the big hot topic questions that are facing the students. Candidates, when you're answering the questions, you'll have 1 minute per answer. The clock for your reference is just next to Brendan over there. And after 1 minute, the mic will be cut off, so please try and be concise and with your answers, and don't waffle on. And just finally, please remember we have got a zero tolerance policy here at the Students' Union, so personal attacks to candidates or members of staff will not be allowed, and the question will be shut off. Brilliant. So just going through the running order. So we'll start with women's, BAME, and then environmental. There's 2 candidates running for these positions. They'll probably about 20 minutes per category. We'll then go to a 20-minute interval when we'll go through the rest of the officer positions in the order of international, European, LGBT+, mature, finishing with disabled students officer. We're hoping for about a 7 o'clock finish. Brilliant. So we'll get straight into it. So first is women's officer. So can we welcome to the stage Luke Freeman and Montana Scarlett, please. Yeah, just come here. If you could just be in the order that I announced, so Luke first, then Montana, if that's brilliant. Yeah, you go first.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Brilliant. So can we start with any manifesto specific questions, please? Yep, student at the front.
Okay, so this is for Luke's manifesto. You said in your third point that the university is a place for respecting all opinions, not censoring those which it doesn't agree with. So I'm assuming this is with reference to the idea of a men's officer and men's views being represented. How can you argue that there is censorship where the issue of men's officer has been brought to not only Faculty Zone this year, but also the all-student meeting last year for fair and open debate?
Okay, I would like to open basically by saying it's not specifically just for men's views.
Sorry, can we stop it? It's not on the mic.
It's not. Okay, I'd like to open by saying it's not just specifically for men's views, it's all views at university basically. As I say in the manifesto, we've been ranked the worst university for 2 years running in freedom of speech. I'd like to basically pull some of that back. I would do that by basically changing a few of the policies, basically not completely removing policies, but some of the kind of policies regarding harassment and stuff. They are a bit strict, and it basically means that it's down to the person's perception. So anything I don't agree with, I can kind of say, well, that offends me, and it creates an offensive environment that for me. And basically what that would then lead to is, because that offensive environment is a form of harassment, you are then not allowed to say any opinion basically that opposes mine. It's things like these basically that are completely restricting the freedom of speech at the university, and it's basically things that I want to change. So,
men's officer is actually a bit of a strange one. Obviously, it has been voted against through democracy twice in a row now. In regards to freedom of speech, everyone does have the right to an opinion. However, sometimes you don't necessarily have the right to defend the opinion. In cases where the opinion is outright wrong or goes against the current moral judgment of a large group of people, it's something that is quite a bit of a difficult issue for everyone. Everyone does have different opinions on certain matters, and freedom of speech is something that the university should be striving towards. However, we also do have to protect students, and if they feel that something is specifically damaging, then that does need to be looked into and sorted out, I suppose.
Great, thank you. Again, any manifesto specific just to kick us off with? Yeah, his hand was up first. Welcome back to you.
Okay, so this is again for Luke regarding your second manifesto point. Obviously, you're running for a women's student officer, and you believe that people who are best suited for positions should receive them regardless of gender. In terms of all liberation officer positions, do you then think that if you don't fall inside that demographic, you can actually represent those correctly and represent them well?
I would argue, well, yes, you can. Basically, historically, many of the people that fought for rights of others have not been part of that actual demographic. You don't need to be part of a certain demographic to empathise with them, to understand kind of the issues they're facing, and to basically represent them. So yeah, that. And basically, the actual point I was making in the policy is basically just proposing a more meritocratic system. So people should get a position based on their kind of achievement, not just based on their actual gender. It should be looked at from a genderless perspective, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
That again is a bit of a difficult one. I would argue initially women started the fight for women's rights, and so in that kind of perspective, it is a women's issue. I would find it personally quite difficult if I needed to console in someone about a very personal, specific issue that had maybe occurred to me or to someone I knew, and to find that perhaps the person I'm speaking to is not of the same viewpoint as me, and if I had to speak out to someone about perhaps a sexual attack, from my own personal perspective, I would possibly struggle to speak to a male doctor about that rather than a female one. Again, that does go the other way of if a man requires that kind of thing, that they would...
Sorry, time's up. Okay, so we've had two manifestos, so we'll open it up to generic questions and also manifestos as well. Yeah, sorry, his hand did shoot up early before.
You mentioned before about the freedom of speech. This is obviously something that's very much generic to university, to all university students. The current Lib Dems and other societies are looking at repealing the no platform policy, which would give a platform for people to speak. Why do you not believe that you can just jump on that bandwagon and give that more of a student voice? Why do you think you need to go through the female officer's role in to accomplish those kind of the same objectives that you could do elsewhere?
Can we start with Montana Flat One? Badly start with. Okay.
Well, that's obviously not quite aimed towards me, but anyone can argue for anyone else's rights, and anyone can, well, has the right to freedom of speech. So if someone believes for a cause genuinely and feels that they can do good in it, I feel that they should quite happily go for that. In the same way, I would quite happily go for LGBT rights and other minority rights, even though I might not necessarily identify with those. I am allowed an opinion, and everyone else is too.
Basically, I'm going through the platform of women's officer because I see kind of the lack of freedom of speech more with regards to gender, actually. It tends to be at the university, obviously, it was previously mentioned and kind of mentioned in my manifesto that there isn't actually a male officer whatsoever, or any male representative for men in the union. So that's not democratic in any way, shape or form, that the fact that there is a women's officer but not a men's. It was kind of cut off at the end of my manifesto, but I actually did write in it at the end of my first policy that there is an alternative, not just to put forward a men's officer, but to also replacing the women's officer with an equality officer entirely. Basically, what this would do is it would allow more freedom of speech for men because there's more representation for men. So I hope that answers the question.
Yep, brilliant. Okay, right. Open it up again to the floor.
Am I allowed to make points before I speak?
Pardon?
Am I allowed to give a context to my question?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, we have men's representation in the fact that there is a large number of male elected representatives. If you look at even the candidates running for sabbatical officers, I think you'll find that 1 in every 4 candidates is female. So females are underrepresented, especially if you consider that 45% of the student population is female. My actual main question is, in order to qualify for this role, you have to self-identify as a woman. So, as you both self-identify as women, how do you feel that your experiences with that identity would mean that you'd be able to effectively represent female students on campus, which is what the description of the role is?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
I feel I could best represent the role at university because I am such an advocate for equality. I want real equality across the campus, regardless of gender, male or female. I want what's best for women in regards to women's issues. Many females have already actually approached me at the university with ideas and things that they'd want to be put forward through the women's officer at the union. Example of this would be, although it's maybe considered small by some, others may not. They say, for example, sanitary towels, they want the bins in the toilets to basically open, rather than having to touch them, have the bins open by themselves. It shows that I am approachable to women, even though many may consider I'm not, obviously.
I feel through my time at the university, I have already in some ways advocated for women's equality. I was the vice president of the Reenactment Society, which is typically seen as a very male-orientated sport. I'm now have been voted as the president of this society, making the actual president male-to-female ratio more 50-50. And I feel that is something that I can continue to do in this role, is to make the university, instead of every 1 in 4, to be 50-50. And a women's officer role should allow that to be more equal between everyone. And that's part of what it is.
Brilliant. Yeah, open that back up to the floor. Any more? Yeah. Come to you, hands up.
If approached by a female who didn't want to speak to you as a person because of whatever conflict of interest was there, who would you send them to, and how would you approach that situation?
If they can approach me personally, I'd probably refer them on to obviously kind of the services that the university provides to kind of help people who kind of have issues in various things, whether it be mental health issues, kind of assault issues, regardless of what it is. I'd basically refer them to the actual university services which help with those, if they can approach me as anyway.
If a student were to approach me and would feel uncomfortable speaking about a certain issue, I would refer them to the current counselling services. We do have chaplaincy, and we do have a variety of other people in places such as ASDAC that are willing to talk in very open spaces in a very private manner. If we can instate that as being something that is part of the actual university itself, within the union, having a separate body of people who are constantly available up with the rest of the sabbatical officers for someone to speak to in a very calm and private manner, I feel that that would actually allow everyone to feel that they can always have someone to speak to about very personal and quite often sensitive issues.
Okay, brilliant. Back up. Yeah, there's a question in the far left over there.
Going back to sort of the men's officer issue generally, obviously there's currently a postgraduate students officer. Do you think there should be an undergraduate student officer? If not, Why?
Yeah, Montana, please stand.
A lot of the current student officers are undergraduates. Many of the sabbatical officers are postgraduates or have suspended their studies in order to do it. It's a slightly different issue, and obviously it is a bit different to tackle. If postgraduates or undergraduates feel that they are being underrepresented, then that is something that they can put forward to debate and to be voted through, and that's up to them.
I probably agree that there should be more representation for undergraduates in comparison to the postgraduates, because there is, of course, a postgraduate's officer. However, it must also be considered that the actual kind of sabbatical officers, etc., they are usually mostly undergraduates anyway. So, for example, the president of the university, the vice president, will normally be undergraduates, and that's kind of pushing forward those values. So.
Yep, thank you. Yep, Sean's been waiting for a while.
Hello. Can I first point out that what you just said was an entire contradiction to your justification behind a men's officer? And my question, however, is that if you are striving towards gender equality and towards a more open freedom of speech, then how do you propose to achieve that by effectively denying 45% of the student body, over 9,000 people, a voice?
Okay, firstly, I'll say it wasn't a contradiction because one of them is an issue of gender equality and the other was not. Secondly, I was going to say you could also argue the same for men. Men do not have a representative, therefore that's ignoring any voice for men whatsoever at the university. Is it right that women should have a representative and men shouldn't? I would argue not. That's simple as that.
It goes back to a point earlier that, 1 in 4 people who get voted for these officers are women. 3 out of those 4 are men, and so that could be argued that yes, you do have a voice. It also goes down to what's been voted through in the actual union itself. As I said previously, it's gone through twice and has failed twice. So perhaps if people wish to continue to push for it, they should consider what they are actually aiming to achieve with a men's officer and how exactly it would be implemented, as the previous iterations of it have not worked.
Brilliant. Back out to the floor. Yep, Josh.
I'd just like to know a little bit about you as individuals, like what obviously in Montana you do reenactment. Just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and like what makes you feel like you're qualified for the role?
Yeah, Montana, start with you.
Obviously, I am now president of the Reenactment Society. I'm also an avid gamer, which I did say in my manifesto, and that is something I am very proud to be, but also have received mixed views on being. I often find myself having to not tell people I'm a woman in game, otherwise I receive some quite hurtful comments, and that's something I aim to change over the next few years. Other than that, I am a geological hazard student. I really enjoy looking at rocks and volcanoes, earthquakes and that kind of thing. And I would like to say I have very varied interests, and I like to do lots of different things.
Okay. Right, at the university I've taken part in quite a few different societies, from AU sports to kind of like ultimate frisbee, to I've just sampled other societies, so like the Rock Society, etc. Currently I'm not part of any, and yeah, so I'm looking for a further role on that. I've been heavily politically involved before, so I used to be the East Midlands Vice Chairman of Conservative Future, Northamptonshire Area Chairman, and also the Northampton Chairman of the seat. And yeah, I'd just like to carry on kind of my work in politics to university.
Brilliant. Yeah, bring your hand up for a
Okay, so this is another manifesto-based question for your first point, Luke, about the actual...
Ben, we've had enough. We've had a lot of candidate-specific questions. Is there anything that could be opened up to both candidates to reply to equally? Yep, question back.
I'm allowed to comment anyway.
Can I just get your opinion on the tampon tax, please?
Could you repeat that, please?
Could you just describe your opinion on the tampon tax?
I think it's actually quite unfair. Men's razors are not taxed. I often find myself buying men's razors instead of women's razors, as women's razors are taxed. It seems a bit strange that a project like that needs to be gendered. Tampon tax is something that obviously the government feels it cannot change through the EU. I would like to argue that it can be changed, considering when you look at what is tax exempt, especially in the US, things such as caskets of ale, which have not been cracked, are untaxable, but women's tampons and sanitary products are. I will go back to a protest that was recently done outside Parliament where women tried to protest against this and the government took little to no notice.
Yeah, basically I agree. She summed it up actually quite well. I would basically say that it's a tax obviously that's kind of being imposed by the EU firstly, but it's tampons and obviously sanitary towels, etc. They're not a luxury good, they shouldn't be taxed. Yeah, simple as that.
Brilliant, and we'll move to our final question on this position. Yeah, question, lady at the back, sorry, Virgie Jack.
I was wondering how the candidates feel that they could personally connect with the connect to me as a female student and the female experience at university, for example, and the underrepresentation that women can get in certain degrees. For example, only I'd say 51% of degrees last year were STEM degrees were awarded to women, but for example, 14% of the STEM workforce is women in these days. So obviously something's happening at the university level that's discouraging women to go into STEM roles. How do you think you'd be able to combat this sort of disillusion that's happening at the university level for women?
Yep, start with Luke with that one.
Okay, I'd argue that there's freedom of choice. Women can go into anything they want. No one's stopping them from going to STEM subjects, and that there's also kind of, you see these with regards to biological subjects. So nursing, medicine, pharmacy, they're all female-dominated subjects. Completely ridiculous kind of idea that kind of women should be more represented in something that they're choosing not to be. The same way men aren't going into kind of biological subjects. And in the first part of the question, how do I feel that I can kind of connect to you as a female student? I'd basically say I want to kind of connect with kind of the masses. So I'd want ideas from females, things to put through the university. Basically, I just want to be the voice for the people. Yeah.
As personally doing a science subject, I can in some ways see where maybe a lot of women can feel put off. The majority of my lecturers are male, with the one female being in the C's office being off ill this year. So in some ways I feel that the women on my course, which I'm part of, feel that as these things can sometimes be a very male-dominated environment once they graduate, whilst it is 50-50 whilst they're actually studying, they might feel a bit put off and intimidated by going into something that they feel is very male-dominated. And that is something that we do need to change. As a woman, I hope that I have the correct sense of empathy to be able to empathise with anyone in the university.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you all very much, and that is the end of the women's question time. Brilliant, thank you very much. So the next scheduled one is for the BAME Students Officer. Are either of the BAME candidates here? Nope, okay, so neither are here, so we'll move on to the Environmental Student Officer. So can we have Dan Morris and Ed Royals, please, to the stage? Just come up that way, Dan. Brilliant, right, open questions up. Can we start with any manifesto-specific questions? The gallery newspapers are around, so pick one up on a gander. Or we'll just open it up to the floor if people are having a look for manifesto-specific ones. Give that a minute. Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, we'll open it up. Can we just get your mic, please? Just.
Do I really need a mic?
Yes, there is.
What experience do you guys both have in environmental campaigns?
Yeah, thanks. Start with you.
Well, earlier this academic year, I took part in Portsmouth 5000, which was a charity-based event in Portsmouth Guildhall. I was the waste ambassador, so I had a team of 30 people whose jobs were involved range from cooking the food that was being prepared for free for the people of Portsmouth, making sure all the recycling was in the correct bins, and also getting pledges for people to pledge that they were going to reduce their own food waste after they left the event. So I think that was the main one that I've done directly this year.
This year I've joined the Green Society and the Fossil Free campaign at Portsmouth University. I'm currently a committee member on the Fossil Free campaign, and we're hoping to get the university to completely divest from fossil fuels by the end of next academic year, and that's in my manifesto. And when we have our AGM for the Green Society, I'm hoping to run for vice chair for next year. So.
Thank you. Open that back up. Yeah, question down here.
So this is one for Edward on your first manifesto point and the point you just raised about completely divesting from fossil fuels. How feasible is that manifesto point? How plausible is that idea for the next year? It seems like a much longer term goal.
Yeah, that's a fair point on the face of it. I was limited by the 140 character count. Last year, the Fossil Free ran a very successful campaign that got the university to divest from coal and tar sands. So half of that movement is already done. The university has no investments in coal and tar sands. So it's sort of the rest of the fossil fuels. And the university pays another company to manage their investments for them. So the easiest way to do that would be to pressure the university to renegotiate their contract so that the company that manages their investments simply doesn't invest in fossil fuels. So the university doesn't have to manage it itself anyway. So we simply need to put that limit on the company managing our investments.
Brilliant. Dan, free to comment on that.
Yeah. I guess my answer would be that I agree that it would be a longer term issue, which would more or less be passed down through over the course of 2-3 years, 2-3 offices, and towards the end of that issue. But obviously I don't feasibly think it's possible to be 100% in a year.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, open that back up to the floor. Yeah.
We haven't had an environmental officer this year to actively engage students with campaigns, so what practical things do you plan to do to encourage this?
Start with Dan.
Yeah, so I was told with the idea of going for it last year, and eventually no one did. Probably my fault there. But I think probably the reason why people didn't go for it was the whole idea that it was tied with ethics, and people who wanted to go just for the ethics didn't go because they were put off by environmental, and people who were put off with ethics who just wanted to do the environmental issues. Now that's been sorted this year. I think that's why there's kind of been a bit of a spark for people running for it, kind of thing. So yeah.
Cool. About a month ago we had a meeting with the leader of the UK Action Team for Fossil Free, and it was really good to be there, but I found that almost no one knew about it. So I'd like to massively increase the availability of information at Freshers' Fair about the environmental side of Portsmouth, and also work with people like RAG and VIP to kind of tie all of the environmental things we do at the uni together more, make it a bit more cohesive, because there's a lot of things we do, but they're all quite disjointed, and there's not much information published about them. It's kind of only the people who are already in those groups know about it. So massive increase at Freshers' Fair and tying all of those things together under the SABS officers to give it greater coherency would be the way I would approach getting students involved.
Yeah, brilliant. Open that back up to the floor. Yeah, question. Can we start?
I was just wondering what you think of the Do One Thing campaign that's been going on this term, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's really good. The getting students involved is always a priority for the SABS officers and the students officers, and anything that helps the environment is exactly what we need to be doing as the young generation, because we're the ones who are going to inherit either a saved environment or a destroyed environment. So at this point, that should be expanded. I think it should be sort of revved up and shouted about, and so should all of the other VIP and RAG events, as well as the environmental societies that we have at the university. I think we should go from being a following university to a leading university in environmental issues.
Yes, I think, especially with our generation, environment is one of our key things that has been raised up. I think that there are very few key people that are pushing forwards the whole idea of we need to do something about this in the previous generation. And it's definitely getting freshers especially heavily involved with Freshers' Fair and making sure everyone just comes together kind of thing, and just stop making it these individual projects here and there, but actually making sure that everyone is aware of this and everyone does make a big kind of stand up for it.
Brilliant. Yeah, back out to the floor.
Okay, so I've been looking at your manifestos, and there's something that strikes me as quite different between them, which is that Dan has gone for more of a ground level approach, working within the union, working directly with students, whereas Edwards is more working with the university on a larger scale. At risk of sounding like an exam question, could you compare and contrast the merits of working at that sort of ground level compared with working with the university as a larger organisation?
Yeah, start with Dan.
Yeah, so what I was going for is starting with individuals, making sure we have a stable foundation to work on, and then basically moving up, and then just because we need to build a big fan base, if you will. Make sure we, as students, actively do things like I've said. I want to do monthly beach combs and around Southsea Common and that area, and just kind of create a large group, and then slowly rise up. We've become going from smaller issues to then obviously tackling larger issues that affect within the union.
Yeah, I feel like I've gone for big, bold claims and ideas because we're at a stage with our ecological climate that we can't focus on just our area anymore. I think we have to act as an entire union to pressure our university to act globally to save this, to solve this problem, because it is a global problem. I definitely agree we should keep our own backyard clean, and we should do things like that. And there's the Green Society, and they work with other societies. So I know that they worked with the Surf Society recently to do a beach clean, and I think that the part of the Green Society manifesto is to hold the environment officer to account. So I think that the environmental officer should hold the university to account, and they are there to make sure that the university ensures that we have a world to live in after we've graduated. We have a safe world to live in. So we need to tackle the global problem.
Back out. Yeah, hands up first.
One of the things I really enjoy about the university, especially living in halls last year, was the recycling scheme. However, having moved into private accommodation in the rest of the city, it's not as thorough, and I feel a lot of students are in the same kind of boat where recycling is collected once every 2 weeks, and it can often build up and cause a bit of a mess. Do either of you have any plans in tackling with the Portsmouth City Council any of these issues that arise from students living in Portsmouth and not recycling?
Yeah, great. I think that now that the university runs a housing service, they work with letting agencies, I think they should have a rating scheme in which they say, these people are doing a good job with the recycling and the cleanliness of the house, and if they install things like solar panels on the roofs, then that would get them loads of marks. I think that the university should pressure all of the houses it's affiliated with to use the same recycling methods and aspire to use the same service even, because as students living in a house for the first time on your own without your parents to help you, there are enough challenges without having to sort out all of your waste yourself. I think that, especially if you come straight from halls, where I am, it's very, very easy. So I completely agree that the way the university works with those houses is important.
Yeah, I've been directly approached about this issue by a few students, and it was suggested, and I agreed with, to go directly to the council and just to talk about to make it easier for the students. In one of my manifesto points, I put that I wanted to hold workshops, how to improve energy and recycling at your own home kind of thing. I mean, it was very easy in halls last year. You took it down, you sorted it all out, put it in one bin, it was taken away daily. Whereas obviously in the hall it's 2 weeks. I don't think it's possible it would be very difficult to get the council to come round more often kind of thing to pick up your garbage, but if there was a way to show them where to store it safely and more cleanly in their own home till the day, I think that'd be better.
Brilliant, thank you. Open that back up. Yep, question at the back.
There's a growing body of research in the role of animal agriculture in the production of meat and CO2 and methane emissions. This seems to be a really big issue that everyone seems to be ignoring in environmental circles. I was wondering what you personally would do to sort of raise awareness of this sort of key issue.
Yeah. Agriculture and farming and that kind of thing is a big contributor to greenhouse gases, and animal waste is another contributor. How would I would like to, with my workshops, kind of raise these issues and make them more aware. In these workshops, I want to invite guest speakers to come in. So having guest speakers from these different areas and just explaining the problems that they're facing, how this can be changed, like we do our own research kind of thing, and then bring it to the council, and council points about that, and then they can kind of implement them. I think that's the whole thing's a big awareness thing though, these major problem.
Okay. I think in halls we should massively push the idea of meat-free Mondays, not preventing people from eating meat on a Monday, but certainly encourage much more choice in the vegetarian and vegan options. I'm a vegetarian at the moment, and I found that halls can be lacking sometimes. I think that we should also, in Ramlin Park, I've noticed a few sort of small grassy spaces that would be perfect for allotments. They could either be student run or society run or even university run, and the university could use those to help provide some of the food that it gives to students in halls. And I think that there needs to be a shift globally from industrialised farming to small local farming, but in terms of what the environment officer can do on that issue, I think working locally with halls is where we would be most effective.
Yep, question down here. So, bees put colony
collapse disorder is becoming an increasing problem around the world. Is that something that you would just raise awareness of, and try and see, to see if you can lobby governments and stuff to avoid pesticides and stuff? But that also involves talking to people. How are you getting up close and personal with politicians, but also the day-to-day students?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of the Save the Bees campaign, and in the university master plan that you can have a look at online, they're planning a lot of new buildings to be built soon. I think that all of those buildings should come with rooftop gardens that are bee friendly, to try and encourage bees to put wildflowers up there, and maybe even a few beehives on some of the taller buildings, to encourage bees to live there and then to increase the population. And certainly there needs to be massive pressure on the government to save bees in this country, because the cost of pollination without bees would be over £1 billion annually. And then in terms of connecting with other campaigns, I've been in contact with the Green Society, that's the Green Portsmouth, that's run by locals, and marched with many other societies on environmental issues and other issues this year in Portsmouth, and I've gotten to know a lot of the leaders in those.
Yeah, when I first saw the plan, I thought one of my favourite points were in a little heading that said more bees. And I definitely think with the rooftop gardens and stuff, and just bringing a more natural pollinisation process, not just to uni gardens and stuff like that, but also as a way of fertilising and growth on an industrial level, that I would say is a lot easier, in the long term cheaper, and much more safer for the environment. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, we'll go to the final question before we go for a break, if there's any questions to be asked from the floor. Yeah, go to the final one.
So there was a recent kind of push to get the kind of campus cafes to start serving kind of more vegetarian options. I just wondered what both of your opinions on this is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it can't be a bad thing to push. It can only be good to encourage more vegetarian options. Not only does this give people a genuine choice in what meal they have, and lunch or dinner at the uni campus and stuff like that, it also allows people who may be trying to go vegetarian or trying new things to just sample and taste meals that have been prepared otherwise. To see if they actually just generally enjoy it, and enjoy that diet option, so they can then implement it in their own homes, kind of thing. It's also obviously growing veg, etc., etc., is a lot cheaper than producing meat. It uses a lot less water. It's obviously takes up a lot less space. So yeah.
Yeah, as a vegetarian, I couldn't agree more. The number of times I've walked into either the library cafe and the park cafe, and they've either not had any left because they've run out of stock, or I've thought, only egg and cress left. So they definitely need more range, but they also need more stock, because it does run out far quicker than the meat options. I think also we should, because we order from food on campus, we should update our menu every year to make sure we're not missing out on any new vegetarian or vegan options they're giving. And if we can increase the bulk, I think that's fantastic, and then increase the range as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, thank you very much. That's the end of Environmental Student Question time. Thank you, guys. Okay, right, we're going to go to our short break. Thank you. So if everyone can be back at 6 o'clock to start for the International Students Officer question time.
We hope you enjoyed the refreshments that were on offer. Beard game or beer game? Beard game strong. No meat, no alcohol event. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we hope you enjoyed the refreshments. If you didn't manage to get any raffle tickets, committee members will be floating around somewhere. They've got badges on them, so just grab one of them, tell you want some raffle tickets, and they'll sell you some.
Right, next up, we have the visually appealing Vibs. She's from the land of the scummers. She claims she has a good voice. I hope she's not chatting shit, because she'll get banged.
Yeah, she will. She's performing alongside Sean and Patricia also. Speaking of which, I'm speaking to Sean in the back. You're saying it's a bit cold, so keep an eye out for the big nips, if you know what I mean. Alright? Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Vibs, Sean and Patricia. Round of applause, please. Louder.
Everyone, I'm Bibs, this is Patricia and Sean. We hope that you enjoy the mashup that we have. sorry. And I know that I let you down. It's too late to say sorry now. 'Cause if you like the way you look that much, baby, you should go and love yourself. If you think that I'm still holding on to something, you should go and love yourself. 'Cause if you like the way you look that much, baby, you should go and love yourself. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed the refreshments that were on offer. Beard game or beer game? Beard game strong. No meat, no alcohol event. Thank you very much. Portsmouth Bangwell Society, everyone. That's right. They wanted to be the last act of the night, but you know we couldn't finish the night on such a low. Just joking. We're nearing the end of our acts for the night. We've got one more in store for you. It's a group from Southampton. Is that really? Is that really something to be proud of?
All right, yeah, Southampton do have a tendency to churn out some rubbish, but rubbish of high quality at that. No need to explain what they do. Ladies and gentlemen, for the final act of the night, please give a warm welcome to the Southampton Bollywood Society. Give it up!
Sabre
तेरे लिए ही तो सिग्नल तोड़ ताड़ के आया दिल्ली वाली गर्लफ्रेंड छोड़ छाड़ के तेरे लिए ही तो सिग्नल तोड़ ताड़ के आया दिल्ली वाली गर्लफ्रेंड छोड़ छाड़ के
तेरी अखियों का इशारा मुझे फ्रॉड लगे तू तो मजनू आवारा बाई गॉड लगे
आपस में वादे खा के अपनी पॉकेट मनी बचा के आया तेरे लिए पैसे वैसे तोड़ जाड़ के घर वालों को भी बाइशाए बोल बाल के आया दिल्ली वाली गर्लफ्रेंड छोड़ छाड़ के तेरे लिए ही तो सिग्नल तोड़ ताड़ के आया दिल्ली वाली गर्लफ्रेंड छोड़ छाड़ के
Gentlemen, we interrupt this program to bring you important news.
आया देखो आया बाबा मोरिया आया देखो आया बाबा मोरिया नन्नन नाचू मैं नचाए बाबा मोरिया तेरे ही बंदे है सबसे चंगे कर देंगे दंगे तू है तो डर है क्या दिल से कहेंगे जो है दिल ने कहा कि साडा दिल भी तू साडी जान भी तू साडी शान भी तू भी तू आसमान भी तू बरसात भी तू कि साडा दिल भी तू साडी जान भी तू साडी शान भी तू भी तू आसमान भी तू बरसात भी तू Now raise your voice, make some noise for Papa Moria.
Against the cage, please.
Also, Bangla Society, everyone. That's right. They wanted to be the last act of the night, but you know we couldn't finish the night on such a low. Just joking. We're nearing the end of our acts for the night. We've got one more in store for you. It's a group from Southampton. Is that really? Is that really something to be proud of?
Alright, yeah, Southampton do have a tendency to churn out some rubbish, but rubbish of high quality at that. No need to explain what they do. Ladies and gentlemen, for the final act of the night, please give a warm welcome to the Southampton Bollywood Society. Give it up!
Please can welcome to the stage Pawaya Saisu, if I pronounced that right. Right. Brilliant. So yeah, gallery newspaper on there, so you can find the manifesto in there, but we'll open it up to manifesto or any other specific questions. Yep.
Okay, so as Athletean chair this year, I've seen that there seem to be some kind of barriers and we don't actually encourage international students to participate in sport. So what my question is what are you going to do to break down those barriers and get more international students into student groups that we do at this university?
Thank you. What I plan to do is bring about a database in the union that brings together all the international students. And then once we have that, it'll be easier for us to reach out to other students through societies societies and sports. So we give out this information to the international students about the various societies and sports that are in the union at present. Because I think the biggest problem that we have is that in terms of information going out, not many people are aware of the various number of societies and sports that are aware. So I think that's how we'll address the problem.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, open that up. Any questions from anyone? Yep.
So within societies, our largest subsection of societies is faith and cultural societies. Sorry. The largest subsection of societies is faith and cultural societies. They make up the bulk, or the largest individual bulk of any subsection. However, when we come to events such as Society Zone, we tend to see less presidents coming and engaging with things like that. How might you encourage societies there for international students to engage more with events like Society Zone?
What I intend to do is I would like to have a system whereby international students, as they come in, especially during the Freshers' Fair, is kind of to introduce them and to have events at the Freshers' Fair, but also introduce students to societies, etc., and allow the presidents to actually reach out to the students. Also, during orientation week, we also intend to have the presidents of societies come out and talk to the international students about their various societies.
Okay. Any manifestos, questions or other questions? Yeah, straight at the back.
It's been spoken of a lot yesterday about the equality and diversity within the university. How would you overcome the issues that were spoken about in terms of the kind of like a white-based or Eurocentric kind of curriculum in particular?
Well, in terms of a Eurocentric curriculum, I think it is something that international students are willing to embrace. I think that's the reason why they do come here. So in that respect, I can understand that it not to be too big of a problem. But what I would actually encourage is that we have a coming together of the Euro students and the international students. So in my manifesto, I do have events that I intend to run, such as Culturama, which is basically going to be nights that are going to be set out in the calendar, about 4 nights in a term, where we'll have international students come in and introduce drama, dance, music from different cultures to kind of bring that integration, if you understand what I'm saying, so that everyone is enlightened and knows about international students and the Eurozone, etc.
Brilliant. Yeah, open that back out.
I think your manifesto might have been cut off, but you just mentioned about organising events for international students. I'm just wondering what event management experience you've had.
Sorry?
organise these events? What event management or experience have you had to organise events for international students?
Okay, not particularly with international students, but back in high school, I was the president of what we call the Roy Club. So basically, it's a charitable club. We had events that we sponsored, that we organized, such as a pageant. We had fun walks, we had fun runs, and that experience is what I think I can bring about to event these events such as Kosharama that I described. And I was thinking sports days for sports societies, whereby we encourage international students to actually join sports societies.
Yep.
In your third manifesto point, you mentioned Christmas and Easter in Britain for international students. What do you actually mean by that? The point's a little vague.
If you see at the beginning it says Home UK, so there is a program that is running with the international office at the moment, whereby international students can apply to go to a British home for a weekend. So the cost of that was roughly about £56 to go. So what I intend to do is cut those costs down to allow students to get into British homes during the Easter breaks and the Christmas breaks, so that they might experience the British culture and to be more comfortable. Because what usually happens is that most international students, some don't go back home for these breaks. They're stuck in their halls or in their homes and with nothing else to do. So I think it'll be a good opportunity for them to actually discover Britain and their culture.
Brilliant, thank you. Move on to the final question then, to the International Student Officer question time, if there is one. Yeah.
One of the ideas raised this year is a buddy system between international students and home students. So what do you think you could do to support this idea and implement it?
So I spoke with the international office about 2 weeks ago, and we talked about a buddy system. So what we decided to do was try to get home students. So this will probably be second years who have already been here and experienced Portsmouth, to actually come up during orientation week. If they could come, we had a system where they'll come in a week earlier, during orientation week, and take about international students, show them the campus, show them Portsmouth, etc., and try to engage them into activities within the union and the university.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Thank you, Prior. Okay, that is the end of International Students Officer question time. So thank you. Brilliant, so we move straight on to European Students Officer question time. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Yanis Michailidis, if I've said that right. Okay, brilliant. Right, open up to the floor for questions.
How do you hope to help European students integrate into Portsmouth University?
Hello. First of all, I would like the Europeans that they travel from their country to the UK to study to feel like this is where they're home now. That they left their home, not they left their home behind, but they have a second home right now. So I would really encourage the students to join different societies. There is a Cypriot society, there is a Bulgarian society, Polish society, there are variety of societies. And I would really like, even for the introduction week as a fresher, to learn more about the societies you can join and the ways and the benefits you gain from them, as well as finding people of your own nation. Thank you.
Brilliant, okay, back to the floor. Galley newspapers are around with the manifesto in there. Yeah. Josh, you got a question?
As it's in your manifesto, what's your views on the British referendum?
Sorry, could you say that a bit louder?
What's your views on the British referendum on the EU?
Personally, I don't want to make a statement about the British referendum, but I believe that students should have a non-biased idea of what the referendum is about. I believe in equality, and I believe that both parties should debate and people will be well informed about different opinions, because that's what democracy is. We have different opinions. And even if you disagree or agree about the opposite opinion, then the other has the freedom of speech to express himself. So you need to understand that there are different opinions than yours, and get well informed about both points.
Thank you. Yeah, back out to the floor. Yeah, move down here. Just behind, just.
Okay, so in your manifesto you mentioned obviously there's going to be a European festival for European students. What would this involve?
Alright, the idea started from back in high school, where we had an exchange program between Bulgaria and Cyprus. I'm from Cyprus. It was something amazing, and Bulgarian people came to our school and they advertised, they promoted their country. So that's what I went to create at the university, a European festival, that's what I want to call it, that people from all of us, we have so many different European societies, that the societies will have the chance to promote their countries, advertise their traditions, their festivals, their events, their food, everything. So it's also a good way to fund the societies.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have any plans to integrate European societies with perhaps other international groups?
Absolutely. I will work really closely with the international students officer. I believe we can cooperate very well, and maybe create an international festival as well. In that way, you have the opportunity to learn about other countries, join maybe other societies that are about different countries, and learn more about them. So that's what I had to say. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yep, back out to the floor for any other questions. Yep.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that EU students face, and how will you plan on supporting students with this challenge?
The biggest issue, the European Union, correct? All right. I believe the biggest issue right now is the refugee crisis. Because I'm from Cyprus, and most of the refugees are now arriving to either Cyprus or Greek islands. I talk with my family every day, and I know the current situation. And I also read the article on the newspaper about the petitions that students from our university had for the refugees. One side supports them, and another one is against it. I will again support equality, to inform students about both opinions, and I will personally would like to see a debate between those two parties. Now, what can we do as a university about this crisis? Unfortunately, it's not for me to decide, but I can have an opinion, definitely. And I will be present to the debate.
Okay, sorry, clock ran out there. Back out to the floor. Yep, shoot in the back.
I don't think you answered the question just correctly. There's a slight misinterpretation. For university students, European university students, what is their biggest problem, and how would you approach that?
Right. Because I'm a European student, I believe the biggest problem for me was to integrate into the UK society and understand the laws. Because I live in Cyprus, I'm from a European country, UK is a European country as well, but we don't have the same laws, we have different laws. So I would like to see in the first week, or introduction week, maybe a seminar, 1 hour lesson of introduction to the UK law. So I would like, as a European citizen, to know my rights. What rights do I have in the UK? What can I do? What can't I do? What's the criminal system working here? And many different law-related questions. Absolutely.
Brilliant. We'll open up back out to the floor for a final question, if there is one. Yep.
Thank you. You've spoken a lot about integrating the way in which the European students integrate with the UK. How would, I believe, the role should also include how British students actually and other international students integrate with the European. Is this question all right? Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was part of the role or not. But yeah, how would you integrate British students and international students with the European student body?
With the European, student body. All right, first of all, I will connect with the previous question that I will work very closely with the international students officer. We'll work together. And my suggestion is to give informative leaflets to students and let them know of the current situations, what's going on in the UK, how their countries can help, how can they participate in different petitions. And I will try to inform students as much as possible with equality. Yeah.
Okay, right, thank you. That's the end of international students, European, student officer question time. Brilliant, so we move on to LGBT plus students officer question time. So can I ask Lauren Neal to the stage, please? Okay, right, questions from the floor. Manifestos are dotted around in the gallery newspaper. Yep, shoot in the back.
You said you do more about recognition of non-binary genders. What practical changes will you actually try and implement?
Basically, like promote more awareness that there is not just male and female students, to make sure that people have a better understanding of the gender spectrum. And I've seen, being part of LGBT plus society, that there are like on their student card it will say one name and they don't identify with that. Like just give them more awareness of like people may not identify as male or female. Yeah.
Yep, brilliant. Okay, right. Back out to the floor for any questions. Yep.
How do you hope to tackle these issues within societies, so bringing equality into societies present at the union?
Basically, make sure that there's like no homophobic or transphobic things going on in lectures or seminars, or if anyone's experiencing that, like to report it, and like make sure that people's voices are heard. Like if they go to LGBT plus society, if they would talk to me as the LGBT plus student officer or to chaplaincy, like to make sure that their voice is heard if they have any issues.
Yep, brilliant. Back out to the floor. Yep.
Yeah, like, could you just tell us a little bit more about you and like what experience you have working with the LGBT community?
I'm a second year sociology student. I self-identify as a lesbian. I'm a member of LGBT plus society. I've worked strongly. I'm on committee this year. I've helped them, like make sure that, with the I'm Not Okay program, like we promote like talking to chaplaincy and stuff. Like, yeah, I've worked closely with them, and like for LGBT plus History Month, like we've helped with it. We had the LGBT plus student officer come and talk to us about the flags, and like we organised Strip Student Pride to make sure, like, yeah, that we're like just the LGBT plus students were there together sharing their experience, and I strongly believe that, yeah, their voices should be heard. And, you know.
Brilliant. Yep, shoot down here. Yep, yeah.
Hi. I wanted to find out what are you going to do to raise awareness of your society? So.
Obviously, like the student officer role is different from LGBT plus society. that like make sure that there are posters and resources there at chaplaincy, at the union, and like at Nuffield Centre. Like I know some people like go and talk to like the cancer service about like the problems they're having. Like make sure that there are resources there, or people feel confident enough to go and talk to LGBT Plus Society, or come and talk to me as the LGBT Plus student officer and stuff. Yeah, just make sure those resources are out there.
Brilliant, yeah. So we can show Ryan's back on
it. So in your manifesto you said that you'd like to petition for more open friendly spaces for LGBT plus students. What does a safe space for an LGBT plus student look like to you, and what do you think the union could do more of to provide those kind of spaces for students?
Like it's like, I don't know, I'm going to again use the example of being part of LGBT plus. Like we have weekly meetings at the Fleet, or like fortnightly meetings at like the chaplaincy. Like make sure that there are places where like students feel comfortable, and like go and talk to the chaplaincy, or like make sure that like if people like are feeling uncomfortable and stuff, to make sure that they do have places where they feel like they can talk to people, they can be themselves without being discriminated against. Or like Pop Pride, like it was a night out designed for LGBT plus students, and I thought it was a fantastic night. And like because being a student who identifies as LGBT plus themselves, like on nights out occasionally, like if I'm near a girl or something, I will be harassed, and just to make sure that there are places where like that intolerance doesn't happen.
Okay. Just in the back.
As the LGBT plus student officer, what campaigns would you and demonstrations would you like to see the university back and the union?
I'd like to back the Not Okay campaign, like because there are people within LGBT plus that do suffer from mental health issues. I would strongly support like the University Mental Health Wellbeing Day, and raise awareness for that. I'd also like to work with the women's officer, and I'd like that people are being represented and supported. And work with LGBT Plus Society, and work with Nuffield and the chaplaincy to make sure that LGBT Plus students are supported.
Yep, brilliant. And back out to the floor. No questions? Okay, right, we'll end that. Oh, yep, final question then.
Sorry, so what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge, and how do you think you're going to address it?
I think for the biggest challenge within the LGBT plus community is that whereas gay and lesbian are their representative, and people are now on board with that, but especially with trans students or pansexual, the plus and identifying as agender, that there are still people not understanding different parts of the sexuality and gender spectrum, and I definitely want that to change and make sure that there are resources there in chaplaincy or in the society or something to make sure that people do understand and to stamp on intolerance.
Brilliant, right, thank you. Give a round of applause for Lauren. That's the end of that question time. Brilliant. So moving on to mature students officer, is Tim Williamson here? Don't think I've seen him. Nope, that's fine. Okay, right, we'll move straight on to disabled students officer in the final one. So please welcome Josh Robertson to the stage.
Hello. I'm going to stand up because I don't like sitting down.
It's your stage. You can do what you wish. Okay, right, open up to the floor for questions.
Obviously you've been disabled student officer this year as well, so what has been your most significant achievement this year, and why does this make it worth us re-electing you?
Well, what's the first thing? Well, firstly, I have been in a meeting with the head of pathology, which is the new course starting next year in September, which is going to be a master's course, and they want to offer free dyslexic eye tests to the student community. I've been raising awareness of that. I feel that's, with changes to DSA coming up in September particularly, more help for dyslexic students and those who might fall outside of the physical disabilities into a more open, like community fed help, such as counselling and stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Open back out to the floor. Yep.
So for the past year, you have been the Communications and Development Officer on the Society's Executive Board. How have you used this role as a platform to help disabled students?
I was elected before for communication development, before I ran for disability officer, because that was only 5 months ago. Society executive did take a bit of a backseat for me when I got elected, because I was obviously I do have a very limited time, as do we all. Yeah, I think there can be a lot more done with disabled students in societies. I do plan to do an event in the summer on this, like, Paralympic sports, and running that. I'm planning on organising that at the moment, and yeah, that's what I plan to do in the summer, to raise awareness of Paralympic sports and other activities that can be helped by those with mental, physical.
Yep, brilliant, Churches. Yep, open back out. Yep, straight here.
So you just mentioned, obviously, with the thing over the summer. What would you like to see the union do as a whole within societies to help promote like Paralympic sports within the actual union itself?
For a start, the government did put in place quite a bit of money and resources available for Paralympic sports after the Paralympics held in the UK in 2012. That was available back then, but very few people sort of took up on that, purely because there isn't as much, like, what is sort of demand for such sports, but I feel it sort of limits, by just limiting university sports to people who don't have a physical disability, sort of is unfair to those who may have a disability. But that can include physical, so using a wheelchair, but also there's blind sports that are, like, really interesting, like blind football, where they have a bell essentially in the ball. They can kick it around. It's things that we don't offer, though.
Sorry, time out there. Open up to the floor for questions. Yeah,
as disabled students officer, how would you help those that are going through ASDEC applications? How would you, in your role, help those who aren't aware of the ASDEC, and also trying to help with applications with them?
Yeah, that's a fair point. ASDAC do give a very good service, and they give out for both mental health and they give for all sorts of disabilities. But it is true that people don't really know that they're there. Like, some people don't even apply for disabled students allowance purely because they don't either believe they have a disability, or they sort of don't want to be stigmatised, which is kind of a bad thing. They don't want to be stigmatised against by having a disability. They don't want it to look bad on their future records. But obviously that's not, as ASDAC's there to help you. It's not there to criticise you. It's there for your benefit. So getting out there and using it is really helpful. I found it really helpful, as well as the counselling service and chaplaincy. They are really, like, an imperative service.
Sorry, just only get a minute. Over the back, yep, student in the back.
You just mentioned about the stigmatism behind disabilities and mental well-being. How would you work within the university and the union to break down that stigmatism and actually make it so it's not considered something that is bad?
I can see what you get. Yeah. So, yeah. Let me think about. I have been working alongside Jamie in a few points, helping raising awareness of mental health. Mental health is a big thing for students. We all have like oh no, I've got a really stressful having a really stressful time when you're having to finish your essay within the next 12 minutes, or you're screwed, essentially. And we don't want that. We want like a de-stressed university. Obviously, you want people to do their assignments, but also you've got to have a place where you can just sit down, you can have a chill out. Like the SOC is there. I also want to push for getting a built room in the master plan, particularly just for a chill out zone, a social area where people can just sit and chill out. I said this in my previous manifesto.
Cheers. Back up to the floor. Like I say, gallery newspapers are dotted around, so is there any manifesto-specific questions from anyone? Yep, go to Kerry again.
In your manifesto, I'm going to quickly just remind myself the wording, that you said that you want to promote mental health and well-being for all, but the rest of the actual manifesto is very focused on yourself obviously being dyslexic, and do you not feel that you're singling out just dyslexics and not us like myself who's quite hard of hearing?
Yeah, that is the problem with only having 100 words to fill quite a vast amount of area to cover. If I had more words, I would have put in. I was going to put in the mental health thing, but being that I wasn't sure that if I've covered it in my manifesto points, I wouldn't have to put it in the main bit. But obviously, that's foresight and probably the lack of amount of words I could put in. It's about 97 words I put in that manifesto. I probably could have used that to promote mental health more, but again, limits.
Yeah, brilliant. Any more manifesto specific questions? Yeah, you've hands up quite a bit.
You say you want to strive to improve the disabled facilities at the university. Can I ask in what areas would you look to improve?
Well, yeah. So Disability Go is a nationwide company that essentially come to you, go to universities, they go to public offices, etc. Sorry. And they go out and look at what facilities we have available. The last one we had here was about 5 years ago. So I want to engage with them, see if they can come reassess the university. I also want to try and implement hearing loops in a few more lecture halls, also in some of the union rooms. So those who are deaf or hard of hearing can also be heard and listened to. Yeah.
Brilliant. We'll open up to the final question from the floor, manifesto or other. Yep, student at the back.
So just to go back to mental health for a minute, do you have any ideas about like practical things that you would do to kind of help promote mental health at the university?
Yeah, as I said a few minutes ago, the de-stress room, I suppose it is available in the chaplaincy, it is available in prayer rooms, but I feel that they're not quite general spaces, that they're rather fixed general spaces. I'm not sure that's the right word, but I think de-stressful seminars, I want to promote the wave that has been going on over in the Nuffield Centre. It's on Wednesdays. They just have chill out sessions, they do dancing, they do all sorts of stuff. And it's just there for you to chill out and have like a relaxed afternoon on a Wednesday, which you might not have if you're doing other stuff.
Brilliant, right. Thank you, and that is the end of Disabled Students Office question time. And that concludes our question times. So we've met all the sabbatical officers candidates and all the student officer candidates. So I want to say thank you all for attending tonight and yesterday. I hope you found it as insightful as I did. Like I say, questions are not over. Feel free to ask candidates questions the rest of the week and during voting week next week. So to all candidates, good luck next week, and we'll see you out campaigning. So thank you very much, guys.